The ocean breeze carried salt and expensive perfume through Bella Costa restaurant's windows. James Rowan adjusted his tie nervously, watching his wife Marissa laugh at something her mother said. 8 years. Tonight marked their anniversary. "Dad, can I have more bread?" 6-year-old Nora tugged at his sleeve. "Sure, kiddo." James buttered another roll, his heart swelling. She had Marissa's laugh, but felt more like him every day. Marissa looked stunning in her red dress. Her mother, Darla, sat beside her, perfectly composed in designer clothing that cost more than James made in a month. The older woman's smile never reached her eyes when she looked at him. "James worked so hard," Darla was saying to the other guests. "Marine biology, such a unique career choice." The subtle dig landed as intended. James forced a smile. "Someone has to study what's happening to our oceans." "Of course," Darla's tone suggested otherwise. "Though I imagine the pay is rather modest." Marissa squeezed his hand under the table. "Mom, please. I'm just saying, dear, a woman has needs, security, stability." James felt his jaw tighten but said nothing. This was their night, their celebration. The waiter approached with champagne. "Ready for the toast, sir?" "Actually," James stood, heart pounding. "Before dessert, I'd like to say something." The table fell quiet. Marissa beamed up at him. 8 years ago, I married my best friend." His voice carried across the restaurant. "I thought I knew everything about love, about trust, about family." Nods and murmurs of approval rippled through their guests. "But sometimes," James pulled out his phone, "sometimes you discover things that change everything." He tapped the screen. The restaurant's sound system crackled to life. The audio was crystal clear. Marissa's voice, breathy and urgent. "God, Zane, we can't keep doing this." A man's voice, deep and confident. "Your mom said you were getting cold feet." "It's just, James is a good man. He loves Nora like she's not his problem anymore. Neither are you." Gasps erupted around the table. Marissa's face went white. Her champagne glass slipped from trembling fingers, shattering against her plate. "James, I can explain." "Can you?" He touched the screen again. Video footage filled the restaurant's mounted display. Security camera footage, their bedroom. Timestamp, 3 days ago, 2:47 p.m., while he'd been at the lab. Marissa stumbled backward, knocking over her chair. Darla's face had turned ashen. "One more thing." James's voice cut through the chaos like a blade. "This whole thing, the affair, the lies, everything, her mother set it all up." He played another recording. Darla's voice clear as day. "You remember what I told you back then? All you had to do was get pregnant. That's it. Once he thought she was his, he was never going to leave." The restaurant erupted. Guests shouted questions. Someone screamed. In the chaos, James leaned down to whisper in Marissa's ear. "You're going to lose everything. Both of you." James first noticed something wrong on a Tuesday. Marissa had been distant for weeks, always on her phone, claiming work was overwhelming. New lingerie, unfamiliar perfume. "A late meeting tonight," she said, not looking up. "Don't wait up." "Again? That's 3 times this week." "Business is picking up. You want me to succeed, don't you?" Something in her tone made him pause. Since when did marketing require so many evening meetings? After she left, James found himself staring at her laptop on the kitchen counter. Just checking email, he told himself. Her browser history made his blood run cold. Hotel websites, lingerie stores, searches for how to hide affair from husband. Text messages synced from her phone destroyed his world piece by piece. "Darla, you're not backing out now, right? Zane can't wait to see you tonight." "Marissa, I feel terrible about this. James is suspicious." "Darla, honey, we've been over this. He's holding you back. You deserve better." "Zane, your mom's right. Stop overthinking." James stared at the screen until his eyes burned. Darla wasn't just enabling this. She was orchestrating it. His phone buzzed. Text from his old college roommate, Samir Vega. "Samir, drink tonight? You sound stressed in your last email." James looked around his empty house, at the family photos lining the walls, at Nora's toys scattered across the living room floor. "James, yeah, I need a friend right now." They met at Murphy's Tavern, a dive bar near the university where they'd spent countless nights as students. Samir worked in digital forensics now, helping lawyers and private investigators uncover electronic evidence. "She's cheating," James said without preamble. Samir nearly choked on his beer. "Marissa, are you sure?" James showed him the texts. Samir's expression grew darker with each screenshot. "Oh man, her own mother?" "Gets worse. This Zane guy, I looked him up. He's some hotshot real estate flipper, drives a Porsche. lives in a penthouse. Everything you're not. Thanks for the pep talk. Samir leaned forward. I didn't mean it like that. I mean, he's everything shallow people think they want. Flash, money, status. But you've got something real. You're a good father, a decent man. Who's about to lose his family to a guy with a better bank account? Maybe not. Samir's eyes gleamed. You want to fight back? Really fight back? James stared into his beer. What are you suggesting? Documentation? Evidence? If this goes to divorce court, you want every advantage. I'm not a spy, Samir. No, but I am. Professionally speaking, Samir pulled out a business card. My firm handles digital forensics, hidden cameras, GPS tracking, phone monitoring. All legal? As long as it's your house, your car, your family plan? James turned the card over in his hands. This feels wrong. You know what's wrong? A mother pimping out her daughter to destroy a good man's life? You know what's also wrong? Some scumbag moving in on your family while you're working your tail off to provide for them. The bartender refilled their glasses. James stared at his reflection in the amber liquid. What if I'm wrong? What if there's some explanation? Then you apologize and delete everything. But James, Samir's voice dropped. What if you're right? What if this goes deeper than you think? The next morning, James called in sick. For the first time in his career, he lied about having the flu. Instead, he drove to Samir's office downtown. The building looked ordinary, but Samir's floor hummed with high-tech equipment. Monitors lined the walls. This is the starter package. Samir held up devices that looked like smoke detectors. Wireless cameras, motion-activated, upload to cloud storage. How small can you go? Samir grinned. Pinhole cameras. USB chargers that aren't really USB chargers. James felt sick. I can't believe I'm doing this. You're protecting yourself. And Nora. Installation took 2 hours. Kitchen, living room, bedroom, office. Cameras disguised as air fresheners, phone chargers, picture frames. Audio's crystal clear, Samir explained. 4K video. Motion activated, but you can monitor live from your phone. James downloaded the app with trembling fingers. His house looked different through digital eyes. Clinical, exposed. One more thing. Samir pulled out a GPS tracker. Her car? I can't. James! Samir gripped his shoulder. You're not the bad guy here. That evening, James installed the tracker under Marissa's Honda while she bathed Nora. His hands shook badly. The next few days were agony. Every time Marissa left, James watched the red dot move across the city. Hotels, expensive restaurants, places she'd never mentioned. The cameras captured everything. Marissa on the phone. Mom, I can't keep lying to him. He's getting suspicious. Darla's voice. Sweetie, we've come too far to quit now. Zane's falling for you. He's talking about marriage. But what about James? What about Nora? What about them? James will survive. And Nora, well, she'll adjust. James left the room before he put his fist through the wall. The affair was worse. Watching Zane enter his house, walk to his bedroom, the man was everything Darla promised. Tall, confident, expensive clothes. James forced himself to watch the footage, not the intimate parts, but enough to document what was happening. Timestamps, dates, evidence. But it was a conversation 3 weeks into surveillance that shattered his world. Marissa and Darla sat in the kitchen, sharing wine while Nora played upstairs. I still think about that day at the clinic, Darla said casually. When we made the switch, James paused the playback. Switch? Mom, we agreed never to talk about that. Relax, honey. James isn't here. He's never going to find out. The paperwork was perfect. Sometimes I feel guilty. He loves her so much. Of course he does. That was the point. But biologically, Zane's her real father. The phone slipped from James's hands, clattering onto the floor. Nora wasn't his daughter. James called Samir at 2 a.m. They switched the paternity records. His voice sounded hollow even to himself. Nora isn't mine. Samir was quiet for a long moment. You sure about what you heard? I've got it on video. They're talking about a clinic, paperwork, making a switch. Darla said Zane is Nora's real father. Okay, this is bigger than adultery now. This is fraud. Medical fraud. We need to be very careful. They met at 6 a.m. at an all-night diner. Samir brought his laptop and legal documents. I've been digging into Zane Holloway, he said, sliding a folder across the table. Guy's shadier than week-old fish, 3 LLCs, 2 shell companies. He's been flipping properties with suspicious financing. James barely looked at the papers. What about the paternity thing? If they falsified medical records, that's a felony. But we need proof. Real proof, not just conversation. How do we get that? Samir's eyes gleamed. We make them tell us, on camera, with witnesses. The plan was simple. James would invite Darla and Marissa to a financial planning meeting. Something about Nora's college fund. He'd rent a conference room, claim he'd hired a financial advisor. What they wouldn't know, every word would be recorded. You think they'll confess? James asked. People like Darla can't help bragging, especially when they think they've won. James spent the next week playing the perfect husband. He brought Marissa flowers, complimented her clothes, suggested they plan a vacation. She seemed relieved by his apparent obliviousness. Meanwhile, Samir worked his medical contacts. I found the clinic, he reported. Seaside Fertility Center. Dr. Patricia Voss was the attending physician 6 years ago. Retired suddenly, moved to Florida. But here's the interesting part. 3 other paternity cases from that clinic were disputed in court, all around the same time as Nora's birth. James felt a chill. You think this was systematic? I think Dr. Voss had a side business. Rich guys pay to hide affairs. Poor guys get stuck raising kids that aren't theirs. The conference room rental cost $200 James couldn't afford, but Samir transformed it into a recording studio. Pinhole cameras in walls, audio equipment under the table, backup devices hidden in briefcases. Remember, Samir coached him, don't accuse them directly. Let them tell you. Ask open-ended questions. James barely slept. The next afternoon, he sat in the conference room wearing his best suit, sweating despite air conditioning. Marissa arrived first, looking nervous. James, what's this really about? You've been acting strange lately. Just want to make sure our family's taken care of, he said. You know how much I love you both. Darla swept in 10 minutes later, all confidence and designer perfume. This is very responsible of you, James. Planning ahead. They sat around the polished conference table. James poured coffee from an expensive service he'd rented for the occasion. So, he began carefully, I've been thinking about Nora's future. College, wedding, all that stuff. That's sweet, Marissa said, but her voice sounded strained. The thing is, I want to make sure everything's set up right. Legally, I mean. James looked directly at Darla. Sometimes there are complications with family financial planning, especially when paternity gets complicated. Darla's coffee cup froze halfway to her lips. What do you mean? Marissa asked. Oh, legal stuff. Making sure the right people are listed as parents on official documents. Sometimes mistakes happen. Records get mixed up. Darla set down her cup carefully. James, what are you getting at? Nothing specific. Just making sure everything's above board. He leaned back, trying to look casual. I mean, we've all got secrets, right? Things we thought we'd never have to explain. The room fell silent. Marissa looked back and forth between her mother and husband. Darla's eyes narrowed. What exactly are you asking? I'm asking if there's anything about Nora's birth that I should know about. Anything that might affect financial planning, insurance, legal stuff. Like what? James's heart pounded. Like whether I'm actually her father? Marissa gasped. Darla went very still. Of course you're her father, Marissa said quickly. James, why would you even... Because I heard you talking. James's voice stayed level. 3 weeks ago, in our kitchen, you were discussing a switch at the clinic. Darla laughed, but it sounded forced. You must have misunderstood. I have it on video. The words hung in the air like smoke. Marissa's face went white. Darla's composure finally cracked. You've been spying on us? I've been protecting myself. And it's a good thing because you've been lying to me for 6 years. Darla stood up abruptly. We're leaving. Sit down. James's voice turned cold. We're going to finish this conversation. You can't make us... Actually, I can. Because if you leave now, I call the police. I call the state medical board. I call everyone who needs to know about your little arrangement with Dr. Voss. Darla froze. How do you know about... Sit. Down. They sat. James leaned forward. Now, tell me about the switch. Darla looked at her daughter, then back at James. Something shifted in her expression, resignation mixed with spite. You want the truth? Fine. Yes, we switched the records. Nora isn't yours. She's Zane's. Marissa buried her face in her hands. Mom, don't... Why should we protect him now? He's been spying on us like some creep. Darla's voice turned vicious. You think you're so moral, so righteous. But you were never good enough for my daughter. Never rich enough. Never ambitious enough. So you what? Decided to trap me? I decided to give Marissa options. She was pregnant, scared, didn't know what to do. Zane wasn't ready to be a father then. But you? You were desperate to marry her, so we made it easy. By lying about paternity? By giving you what you wanted. A family, a beautiful daughter. You should be grateful. James stared at her. Grateful. You got 6 years with a child who adores you. 6 years of feeling like a real man, a real father. Do you know how many men never get that? She's not my daughter. Biologically, no, but you raised her. You love her. What difference does DNA make? The difference is choice. You stole my choice. You made me build my whole life around a lie. Marissa finally looked up, tears streaming down her face. James, I'm sorry. I wanted to tell you so many times, but you didn't. Either of you. He stood up, feeling strangely calm. You let me change diapers, walk the floor all night when she was sick, teach her to ride a bike, plan for her college fund, all while knowing she wasn't mine. She loves you, Marissa whispered. And I love her, which makes this so much worse. Darla's face hardened. So what now? You're going to destroy our family over some technicality? I'm not destroying anything. You already did that. James pulled out his phone. The question is what happens next. James hired Rebecca Martinez, the most aggressive divorce attorney in Boston. She had a reputation for scorched earth tactics and zero tolerance for deception. This is a prosecutor's dream, she said, reviewing the evidence. Fraudulent paternity, medical record tampering, conspiracy to commit fraud. Your wife and her mother are looking at serious criminal charges. What about Nora? Rebecca's expression softened. Legally, you have no parental rights, but given the circumstances, a judge might grant supervised visitation. The child's best interests take precedence. And financially? You won't owe child support. In fact, you might sue for damages. 6 years of financial support under false pretenses? That's easily 6 figures. James stared out at Boston Harbor. I don't want their money. I want justice. Justice comes in many forms, but first, we move fast. File for divorce immediately before they hide assets or coordinate stories. The papers were served the next morning while Marissa was dropping Nora at school. James watched through the kitchen window as the process server approached her car. Marissa's face went through a series of emotions: confusion, recognition, and finally, panic. She burst through the front door 20 minutes later. James, what the heck is this? He sat calmly at the kitchen table, sipping coffee. Legal papers. I'm divorcing you. You can't do this. What about Nora? What about our family? What about them? According to you and your mother, we never had a real family. Marissa sank into a chair, scanning the documents. Fraudulent paternity? James, this will ruin everything. My job, my reputation. Should have thought of that before you lied to me for 6 years. I can explain. No, you can talk to my lawyer. And Marissa? He stood up, straightening his tie. You might want to find a good attorney, because this is just the beginning. Darla arrived an hour later, storming into the house like a hurricane. You son of a gun, she screamed. You think you can destroy my family? James didn't look up from his newspaper. Your family destroyed itself. I'll fight this. I have lawyers too. Good, you'll need them. She lunged toward him, but James was ready. He caught her wrist before she could strike him. Touch me again, and I'll have you arrested for assault. His voice was ice cold. Get out of my house. This isn't over. Actually, it is. You're trespassing now. Leave, or I call the police. Darla left, but not before knocking over a lamp and screaming threats that the neighbors definitely heard. James called Samir. Phase 2 is a go. While James and Marissa battled in family court, Samir had been busy investigating Zane Holloway's business dealings. What he found was a web of financial crimes that made the paternity fraud look minor by comparison. He's been running a real estate money laundering scheme, Samir explained over lunch. Buying properties with dirty money, flipping them, selling to shell companies owned by the same dirty money sources. It's textbook. How does this help us? Because guess who's been helping him set up those shell companies? Who's been providing legal advice, signing documents, even investing her own money? James felt a cold smile spread across his face. Darla, Exactly. She's not just guilty of paternity fraud. She's an accessory to financial crimes, federal crimes. The FBI moved fast once Samir provided his evidence. They raided Zane's office on a Tuesday morning, carting out boxes of documents and hard drives. Local news covered the story extensively. Real estate mogul arrested in money laundering scheme. Zane's lawyer tried to cut a deal, but the evidence was overwhelming. Bank records, email communications, property transfers, it all painted a clear picture of systematic fraud. Darla was arrested at her country club. James watched the footage on the evening news, feeling a savage satisfaction as FBI agents led her away in handcuffs. Her carefully maintained composure finally cracked completely. She screamed at reporters, cursed at the agents, demanded to call her lawyer. "Mom, what's happening?" Nora asked from the couch beside him. James muted the television. How do you explain to a 6-year-old that her grandmother is a criminal, that her entire family is built on lies? "Grandma Darla is in trouble with the police," he said carefully. "She did some bad things." "Are you and Mommy getting divorced because of the bad things?" The question hit him like a physical blow. Nora was too smart, too perceptive. She'd already figured out that their family was falling apart. "Adults sometimes make mistakes," he said. "Big mistakes that hurt other people. When that happens, sometimes families have to change." "Are you going to stop being my daddy?" James pulled her onto his lap, fighting back tears. "Never. No matter what happens, no matter what anyone says, you'll always be my little girl. Okay?" She nodded against his chest. "Okay." But James knew it wasn't that simple. Legally, he had no claim to this child. Biologically, she belonged to Zane Holloway, who was facing 20 years in federal prison. Emotionally, she was his daughter in every way that mattered. The custody hearing was scheduled for the following month. The family courthouse felt like a coliseum. James sat beside Rebecca Martinez, watching as Marissa entered with her legal team. She looked smaller somehow, diminished by weeks of media coverage and public shame. Darla wasn't there. She was still in federal custody, denied bail due to flight risk. Judge Patricia Hawkins had a reputation for no-nonsense rulings and zero tolerance for lies. She reviewed the case file with a stern expression before calling the court to order. "This is highly unusual," she began. "We have allegations of paternity fraud, medical record tampering, and conspiracy spanning multiple years. Mrs. Rowan, your attorney wishes to make an opening statement." Marissa's lawyer, a nervous young man named David Chen, stood up. "Your Honor, my client was a victim herself, pressured by her mother, manipulated by older, more experienced conspirators." "Objection," Rebecca interrupted. "Mrs. Rowan was an adult who actively participated in defrauding my client for 6 years. Sustained. Mr. Chen, stick to facts, not sob stories." The first witness was Dr. Patricia Voss, subpoenaed from her retirement in Florida. She looked uncomfortable as she took the oath. "Dr. Voss," Rebecca began, "did you alter paternity records at Seaside Fertility Center?" I need to invoke my Fifth Amendment rights." "Your Honor, Doctor, Voss has already been granted immunity in exchange for truthful testimony." Judge Hawkins fixed the doctor with a stern look. "Answer the question." Dr. Voss squirmed. "Yes, I altered records in several cases." "Including the birth certificate for Nora Rowan?" "Yes." "Who paid you to make these alterations?" "Darla Kramer. She said her daughter was in a complicated situation, that it would be better for everyone if certain adjustments were made." "How much did she pay you?" $50,000? Gasps echoed through the courtroom. James felt sick. $50,000 to steal his fatherhood. Rebecca continued. "And you changed the paternity records to show James Rowan as the father instead of Zane Holloway, without Mr. Rowan's knowledge or consent?" "Yes." Marissa was crying quietly at the defendant's table. Her lawyer looked like he wanted to disappear. The next witness was Samir, who presented the digital evidence methodically. Audio recordings, video footage, financial records. The conspiracy laid bare in excruciating detail. "And you can confirm that these recordings are authentic?" Rebecca asked. "Absolutely. I supervise the collection personally using professional-grade equipment. Chain of custody has been maintained throughout." Judge Hawkins reviewed the transcripts. "Mrs. Rowan, do you dispute the authenticity of these recordings?" Marissa's lawyer whispered in her ear, but she shook her head. "No, Your Honor." "So, you admit to participating in paternity fraud?" Another whispered conference. Finally, Marissa stood. "Yes, Your Honor, I admit it." The judge's expression hardened. Mr. Rowan, would you like to make a statement? James stood, his legs unsteady. Your Honor, I loved my wife. I loved our daughter. I built my entire life around what I thought was my family. I worked extra hours to pay for dance classes and birthday parties. I saved every penny for college funds. I taught her to swim, to ride a bike, to believe in herself. His voice grew stronger. They stole that from me. Not just the money, not just the time. They stole my right to choose my own life, my right to know the truth about my own family. What are you asking the court to do? I want justice, Your Honor. Criminal charges for fraud, financial restitution for 6 years of support under false pretenses, and, his voice broke slightly, I want visitation rights with Nora. She didn't choose any of this. She shouldn't be punished for her mother's crimes. Judge Hawkins was quiet for a long moment. This court finds the defendant guilty of conspiracy to commit paternity fraud, falsification of medical records, and criminal deception. Mrs. Rowan, you are sentenced to 2 years in state prison, suspended to 6 months with 5 years probation. You will pay full restitution to Mr. Rowan in the amount of $127,000, representing documented financial support provided under false pretenses. Marissa collapsed in her chair. Regarding custody of the minor child, the judge continued, this presents a unique situation. Biologically, Mr. Rowan has no parental rights. However, given the circumstances and the child's emotional attachment, this court grants supervised visitation pending further psychological evaluation. James felt a weight lift from his chest. Not everything, but something. A chance to maintain a relationship with the little girl he'd raised. Furthermore, Judge Hawkins added, I am referring this case to the district attorney for possible criminal prosecution. This level of systematic fraud cannot go unpunished. As they left the courthouse, Rebecca pulled James aside. This isn't over. Darla's federal trial starts next month. Zane's pleading out, but he'll still do time. And Marissa? She'll be lucky to avoid criminal charges herself. James looked back at the courthouse steps, where Marissa sat sobbing into her hands. 6 months ago, she'd been his wife, his partner, the mother of his child. Now she was a convicted felon who destroyed their family for money and status. He felt no satisfaction in her downfall, only emptiness where his old life used to be. 3 months later, James was moving out of the house they'd shared. Most of the furniture would be sold to pay legal bills. The family photos were the hardest part, years of memories that now felt like lies. He was packing books when he heard a car in the driveway. Through the window, he saw Marissa climbing out of an old Honda. She looked thin, exhausted, nothing like the confident woman he'd married. She knocked hesitantly. James, can we talk? He opened the door but didn't invite her in. What do you want, Marissa? I wanted to apologize before you left. Apologize? The word tasted bitter. For what part? The adultery, the lies, stealing 6 years of my life? She flinched. All of it. I know you hate me. I don't hate you. I don't feel anything for you. That's worse, isn't it? Rain had started falling, soaking her hair and clothes. She made no move to seek shelter. I lost everything, she whispered. My job, my friends, my family. Mom's in federal prison. Zane won't even take my calls, and you... What about me? You were the only good thing in my life, the only real thing. I threw it away for what? Money? Status? Mom's approval? James studied her face, looking for signs of the woman he'd once loved. She was there, somewhere underneath the guilt and shame, but too damaged to matter now. You made your choice, he said quietly. All of you. You chose Zane's money over our marriage. You chose Darla's schemes over honesty. You chose everything except me. If I could take it back, you can't. And even if you could, how would I ever trust you again? How would I know when you were telling the truth? She had no answer. James pulled an envelope from his jacket pocket. Your final divorce papers. We're officially done as of yesterday. She took the envelope with shaking hands. What about Nora? What about her? Will you tell her the truth? About Zane being her biological father? James considered this. Someday when she's old enough to understand. But I'll also tell her that biology doesn't make someone a parent. Love does. Care does. Being there every day does. You'll still be her father? In every way that matters, yes, the court agrees. Relief flooded her face. Thank you. Don't thank me. I'm not doing it for you. I'm doing it for her. Marissa turned to leave, then stopped. James, do you think you'll ever forgive me? He watched the rain drip from her hair, Remembered all the mornings they'd shared coffee at the same doorway, all the evenings they'd planned their future together. "I don't know," he said honestly. "Ask me in 10 years." She nodded and walked back to her car. James watched her drive away, then closed the door on that chapter of his life forever. Epilogue. 6 months later, James stood on the deck of his new apartment, watching Nora build a sandcastle on the beach below. The custody arrangement worked better than anyone had expected. She spent weekends with him, holidays alternating between her mother and the man who'd raised her. She called him Dad. That hadn't changed. Marissa had moved in with her sister in Vermont, working as a cashier at a grocery store. Darla was serving 18 months in federal prison. Zane had pled guilty to money laundering and tax evasion, sentenced to 8 years. The revenge James had planned was complete, but it felt different than he'd expected. Not satisfying exactly, more like closing a wound that had been festering for too long. "Dad," Nora called from the beach, "come help me with the towers." James climbed down the wooden steps. He had a daughter to raise, a life to rebuild, and finally, after everything, the truth to build it on. As the sun set over the Atlantic, James realized that some victories weren't about destroying your enemies. Sometimes they were about saving what mattered most from the wreckage they'd created. In the end, that was revenge enough.